Well, you asked, so I'm going to deliver. Today, we're talking about not the overall jobs of Final Fantasy Tactics, but specifically what their abilities rank as in the overall combat sandbox, because apparently a lot of y'all are more interested in that than the overall jobs kit. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including coverage of all things Final Fantasy Tactics, such as tier lists discussing the viability of the specific ability sets of the jobs in the game, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Also, as always, thank you to my channel supporters. At the end of this video, you will be seeing their names scroll by, whether they be YouTube members or patrons on the right-hand side of the screen. If you would like to join them and support the channel directly, help make things a little bit easier to handle when we don't have great ad rev and all that type of stuff, then you will find links to both my YouTube memberships and my Patreon in the description down below. So what exactly is happening today? Well, as I mentioned in the intro, there was a lot of, I guess, confusion in my initial tactics job tier list video that I did, asking why certain jobs such as, Squire, were rated as lowly as they were, considering that they have such phenomenal skills like JP boost, move +1, focus, all that type of stuff that are great for grinding or just overall utility over the course of the entire game. Now, to my credit, I specified very clearly in the beginning of that video that the point of that tier list was to look at each job as a whole. What are its stat growths? What are its bases? Yes, what abilities does it have, but also what gear can it use? And how does that whole picture change the way that that job functions if you choose to mainline it on a character for the game, right? So while yes, Squire has great skills, and we're going to talk about that right at the beginning. Spoilers, as you can see, there is a Squire tier on this list. It's not the best to use as a character's main job for the entire game. It's just not. You literally cannot deny that. There's no evidence for it. It's just a bad job as a main job to use and level in. So, since there were a lot of people that wanted to see discussion of just the abilities of jobs, and because frankly I do think it is an interesting discussion, we're going to do that here in this tier list. As a few baseline discussion points then, we will not be discussing what gear a job can use. We will not be discussing what stat growths or anything like that, move range, jump range a job has. We're just going to be looking at its basic active skills, counter skills, support skills, and move skills. Yes, if there's some like crazy synergy, like say night break skills being particularly good if you use them with a ranged weapon like an archer, then we will talk about that, and that may wind up coming into their overall ranking in the tier list. But overall, I would like to focus as much as possible on what a specific job brings to the table. Also, before we begin, apologies for my slightly scratchy voice. This is the first video that I'm recording since I got back from the summer camp that Jane and I volunteer at every year. I lost my voice. I do a lot of hollering there because I'm an archery instructor and I run a lot of activities outside of archery, and I always lose my voice. Then we got sick. I'm only just now recovering, so apologies if there's a little bit of a lower vocal quality than you're used to here on the channel. With that said, let us begin. Of course, as you might expect, based on the fact that there's an entire tier named after it, Squire is going directly into Squire tier. The reason for that is because basically Squire is what makes acquiring other jobs and their abilities more reasonable, at least in the base version of the game. Of course, this tier list is being recorded prior to the release of Ivalice Chronicles, so we don't know what changes, if any, we're really going to wind up seeing once we get our hands on that in terms of leveling and JP acquisition. But for right now, Squire is the absolute king of not only JP acquisition and as such other skill acquisition, but also overall basic unit functionality, and we'll talk about why. So first of all, the active skills of Squire. The big ones, focus and throw stone. Focus is phenomenal. It comes in at a high JP cost, but that's really not too much of a concern, seeing as how grinding is pretty easy in FFT once you know what you're doing, and that's going to be a consistent theme across all jobs, so we're not going to focus too much on JP costs unless it's something truly outlandish. But focus is great because it does two things for you. First of all, each time you use it, it boosts your physical attack by 1, which means anything that relies on your physical attack damage is getting a nice boost from it. And seeing as how it's one of the first skills you can get on one of the first jobs in the game, it's very easy to utilize on any physical attack oriented job. It's also great for grinding XP and JP because you just can sit in the back, You don't have to have a target. You don't have to have anything other than yourself to just cast focus, get that buff, get some JP, get some XP. And because it's targeting yourself, you will always gain a level appropriate amount of XP, so you can very easily rely on it to get levels, and you will always get as much JP as you can from it based on what your job level currently is, whatever job that it is that you're in. Absolutely phenomenal skill, extremely powerful, and honestly something that I would run on a lot of different physical-oriented jobs, to say nothing of anything that I'm trying to grind up. Throw Stone is another good option in that regard, basically just because of its utility. Throw Stone is great because it gives you a 3-range, fairly low damage physical attack, but that still can deal some damage to finish off weakened targets, or potentially knock an ally out of a status effect if they're charmed or asleep, or even, if you're lucky, knock something off of a cliff or knock it back to either deal extra damage, break a charge, things like that. And especially earlier in the game, when you have maybe like knights or monks that haven't unlocked some of their other skills, you kind of want a physical ranged option on those jobs, and Throwstone can be that for you to make sure that they're not completely useless and wasting their turn by doing nothing when they're trying to catch up to the enemy. Beyond that, Squire has Counter Tackle, which is probably one of the weaker counter skills in the game, but frankly, just having the option to be able to counterattack in melee to deal some chip damage, knock things back, etc. is a very solid option, and something that you'll probably use on a lot of your characters through a good portion of the game until you get other more specific counter skills unlocked. The big ones that come after those active skills, though, are JP Boost and Move +1. JP Boost is the single most busted skill in the game, and it is pretty much the reason why I've been advocating for the JP system in any remasters, remakes, sequels to FFT, whatever, be changed. Because basically, you go into Squire with every single character that you're going to use, you unlock JP Boost, and until you unlock every single job and ability that you want for that character's build, you never take JP Boost off of them, and it completely invalidates all the other support skills in the game. The reason? It gets you more skills and more jobs more quickly. And that is not a fast process, especially if you don't feel like going through an absolute grind fest to unlock what you want in a timely manner. JP Boost is vital. It is the single most important skill in the game, and as such, it makes Squire and its ability set probably the single most important set in the game, and it's why we're spending so much time on it. Everyone wants JP Boost, and that is why S tier is called Squire tier here. To follow that up, we also have Move +1 as a movement ability, which is also just great. It takes a long time to get other jobs that have more valuable movement abilities than Move +1, because mobility is king in any sort of tactics game. Even me, who loves like tanky turtle strats, holding back, throwing ranged attacks out, using magic, having really tough slow units and anything like this, see all my love of Terminators in Warhammer 40k, I acknowledge that the optimal thing to do is have the most mobility in most game systems, and FFT is no different. So, having the ability to get one extra point of move or one extra range of move on any character by just getting a 200 JP skill or 250 or whatever it is from Squire at the very beginning of the game makes it massively valuable. Now you don't need to worry about having battle boots if you don't want. You can also stack battle boots on top of that if you want for even more move range. It's great, and honestly is what makes some early melee jobs that are pretty powerful like Knight way more viable, because without it, they've got like, what, 3 move, and that is brutal to try and use. So, yeah, Squire is phenomenal. There's a reason that every single character you're ever going to seriously use is going to be in it for some period of time, and as such, it is the epitome of the Squire tier. Next up, we have Chemist, and funnily enough, back-to-back, Chemist is another Squire tier class. And I know this is something that I'm going to get flack for, because I've gotten flack for it before from people, but especially outside of a tier list where we're talking about the overall capabilities of the job, just looking at the capabilities of the Chemist class and its job abilities and skills and all that type of fun stuff, it's easy to see why this is so strong. Items are the single most efficient form of healing and support in the game. Yeah, you can't get haste or protect or shell or whatever from them, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just need to be able to huck 150 points of HP at someone just to keep them up. Sometimes you just need to be able to throw a Phoenix down at something to keep its hearts from running out or its lives from running out and permanently dying, forcing a restart, or if you're doing an Iron Man run, forcing you to just continue on without potentially one of your strongest characters. Sometimes someone just got blinded or poisoned or silenced or turned into a frog, and all of their kit has now been completely shut down, and being able to just hit them with an item to try and remove whatever status effect it is that they have, which you might not even be able to land the spell in the first place. Having an item that can do that for you is great, and being able to throw it from range is also great. So, Chemist, absolutely S tier. Beyond just all that healing and support capability with items, though, you also have Auto Potion, which is easily one of the most broken counter skills in the game. If counter tackle is something that you get early and have on a bunch of your kind of like frontline melee fighters, Auto Potion is what you kind of go to as your end game counter ability just generically across the board for everyone. Because being able to just say, I got hit, and I'm immediately going to heal for 150 HP if you know what you're doing and only keep X potions in your inventory, is disgustingly busted. This is one of the skills for Chemist that I've advocated for being changed. It is something that probably should be nerfed in some capacity, not made nearly as efficient as it is, because without truly game-breaking damage from the enemy, Auto Potion will be able to keep your team alive, especially if they have boosted Brave, through most attacks in the game. Then, of course, you do have Throw Item as well, the skill that is what allows Chemists to be as effective as they are when you're actually spec'd into the job, and you can just make anyone able to do that so long as you're willing to dedicate a support slot to it. And just having anything like a tanky knight that can also throw items around, be really hard to kill, and also keep your entire party healed up and supported is ridiculously strong. Chemist is insane, and if you take all of its bad growths, much like Squire, and its kind of middling equipment options out of the picture and just look at the skills that it has on offer, absolutely phenomenal. Love it. It's a great choice. Next up, we have Knight, and Knight is going to be solidly B tier. Primarily, we're looking at two major things here with Knight. Its break skills, and then what equipment it allows you to use. And while these are not game-defining skills, they can be very good with the right build, and they enable you to do certain things that you might not otherwise be able to pull off. So, first of all, the break skills. If you didn't know, Knight's main feature is its Arts of War ability, which essentially allows it to neutralize enemy armor, weapons, and stats to be able to cripple them in ways that they can't really recover from very effectively. For example, if you have an enemy that is a really heavy melee attacker, break their weapon. Suddenly they're not as scary anymore, especially if there's something like Holy Knight that needs a sword to be able to use its actual Holy Knight skills. Or consider maybe something is really causing you problems because it's got a great shield and a great mantle, and you're having a really hard time hitting it with physical attacks. Break the shield. Cool. It has way less evasion now, and it'll be much easier for you to hit it. Or potentially, you're just trying to grind, or there's an enemy that has a particularly high stat, and you want to be able to kind of neutralize that a little bit to make it a little bit easier for you to handle them overall. Cool. Break power, break speed, break MP if it's a scary mage. You can do all of that with Knight. And while a lot of the time it's going to be better to just deal raw damage to something and try and just neutralize it by making sure it has no more HP, it's not always feasible for you to do so, so having the option to break stuff is great. Combine that with the fact that these skills do work with like ranged weapons such as bows, and you have a lot of versatility here to have a character that can help deal with problematic enemies on the field when they might not be able to just outright 1 or 2 or 3 shot them with physical damage. Add on top of that the fact that you have support skills that allow you to equip swords, shields, and heavy armor, and you have a lot of different ways that you can make otherwise squishy characters or low physical attack characters a lot more capable on the battlefield. For example, one of my favorite things to do is giving equipped sword to a black mage, because at the end game you can get a rune blade that is a very powerful physical attacking sword that also gives you a boost to your magic, which is another way to make your black mage skills hit even harder, something we'll get to in a little bit here. Or maybe you just have something that's really squishy, like a Chemist, and you don't have any clothes that you particularly want to use on them for a nice status effect. Give them equip heavy armor and watch their HP go through the roof. There's a lot of fun options there, and while Knight is not going to be the top of the pack in terms of how often you want to use its skills, they are there and can be very nice when it is applicable for you to use them. Now moving on to Archer. Archer is probably going to go to D tier, honestly. It's really not great. We've talked in the past about how the aim skill is really mediocre, and while it is being changed in some capacity for the Evilise Chronicles, we haven't seen exactly what that change looks like yet, how much better it is potentially going to be. So for now, we have to go off of the current pretty mediocre aim skill. Basically, you just take some time, charge up an attack, and deal bonus damage. Woohoo! If the enemy moves before your attack goes off, you're SOL. Doesn't go through, you're done, you wasted your turn. As far as the other potential support and movement skills and all that type of stuff that an archer would have, I mean, you can get Adrenaline Rush. Not a bad counter skill. It costs 900 JP, which is pretty pricey, and you still need it to be able to trigger when you get hit. But if it does trigger, you do get +1 to your speed, and that can stack forever. So potentially, if you're able to take enough hits and survive those hits, you can get insanely speedy. But there's going to be a threshold that you hit where, like, you've gotten attacked so many times, the battle is probably close to over anyway. And if you have gotten hit that many times and survived, you're probably so fast that you're not really going to be getting hit again. So it hits a hard threshold, and you have to live long enough to even get to that threshold in the first place. So it's not great. As far as movement abilities, like, yeah, you can get Jump Plus, which is, like, very situational. There's not a ton of times where you desperately need to be able to jump up to extreme heights. And while it can give you some options in terms of dealing with problematic enemies and story fights, there's plenty of other options to deal with them as well, including, oh, I don't know, infinite height spells that can just nuke them, no matter how far below them geographically you are. So not something I've utilized very often, especially over stuff like Move +1, and it means that Archer really kind of winds up being mediocre. Like, you can't even equip bows with them. You can only equip crossbows, the far inferior range damage option. It's just, it's disappointing. It's not an outright failure. There's times where you'll use some of their stuff, but it ain't great. It ain't great. Black Mage, however, is quite phenomenal. It's going to be our first A tier here, just based on the fact that black magic slaps, man. Like, you've got all 4 levels of all the major elements of spells, plus things like poison and death and flare and all sorts of fun stuff. Plus, you can get arcane counter, arcane strength, no movement abilities to speak of, but you don't really need them. Like, at the end of the day, you got a character decked out with good magic attack, and they'll just nuke stuff with black magic. You can have a character with just black magic equipped for the whole game and be fine. It will not be an issue whatsoever. Of course, you can make it better by giving other support skills or the like, but, like, you really don't need it. It's just, you have range, you have AoE, you've got decent terms of speed, like casting time, and you can buff yourself and make yourself a more efficient magical killer. Like, what more could you want? It's very simple. There's a lot of different jobs that actually want to have black magic equipped because they do have good magic attack. Even things like Geomancer can benefit from it if you want to have a more damaging magic option. It's just great across the board. A little bit of a one-trick pony and doesn't bring a ton of support options to the table that make things like Squire and Chemist phenomenal, but definitely a choice nonetheless. Now, White Mage, as is pretty much always the case in any sort of FFT discussion, is going to be 1 tier lower than Black Mage in B tier. It is definitely a very solid option. You have the ability to heal. You have the ability to heal in an AoE. You can apply status buffs like Protect and Shell. You even got some damage with things like Holy. Like, it's not bad, but it's never going to be quite as efficient as just the raw destructive capability of something like a Black Mage or the direct instant healing and support of a Chemist. You won't feel bad using a White Mage's abilities, and having something like Regenerate as a counter skill on, like, a tanky knight, for example, just keep them getting HP back every turn is certainly a solid option, but you do tend to have other better options as well. It doesn't hurt to have, but it's not the best to have either, so I think B tier is a very reasonable place for it to be. Now, Thieves. Thieves, I think, are going to be solidly C tier, and some of y'all are going to say that that's crazy, but hear me out on this. The main reason that you want a Thief is for the Steel X, Y, or Z abilities, right? Steel Weapon, Steel Helm, Steel Armor, Steel Accessory, Steel Heart, whatever. The issue with that is in most fights, you're not using it. If you're bringing a Thief to a fight, it's either because you just always want to be prepared because you never know what's going to show up if you haven't played the game before and want to have the ability to steal a cool piece of gear, or you have played the game before and you know where all the good pieces of gear are and know when it is you're going to need a Thief for that fight. Beyond that, you're not typically using the steal abilities. Like, it can be nice to have charm on something for sure, like just being able to turn monsters or enemies of the opposite gender to your side for a little while and kind of flip the whole battle on its head as a result can be nice, but it's also very situational. And that's one ability out of the Thief's whole active skill set. So I don't put a lot of stock in it. It's really not my favorite active ability set. It's really more just for looting, which is great, but also certainly not necessary and certainly does not lend itself well to moment use. Now, what you do get is some other nice support options like, say, Poach or Move +2, which are very solid. The issue is Move +2 is significantly less overall impactful than Move +1, because by the time you can get Move +2, not only do you have Move +1, which is more often than not plenty of move range for most characters earlier in the game, but you also have access to things like boots that will give you even more move range if you really need it. So taking the time to invest the JP into getting Move +2, while it is a strict upgrade, really isn't necessary, and so it doesn't lend credence to Thief in the same way that Move +1 gives a lot of support for Squire. There's going to be people that call me out on that, I'm sure, because just in an objective sense, like, obviously +2 move is better than +1 move, but in the game's combat sandbox, not as useful as you would like to see. And its counter abilities are basically useless. Like yeah, you can get like Gill Snapper, but woo, you get such a minimal amount of gold from that compared to the amount of gold that you get from finishing battles. It's completely negligible, not something to focus on whatsoever. Now, next up, we have Monk, and Monk, I think, is going to be another Squire tier ability. There's not going to be too many more of these as we go forward through the generic classes, but Monk is definitely up there just because it gives you so much to work with. You get Chakra for AoE healing and mana restoration. You get Revive to, revive characters. You get Aura Blast to have a really solid physical ranged attack. You get Shockwave, an even more potentially powerful physical ranged attack. You get things like Doom Fist if you want to be able to neutralize the enemy character over a couple of turns. You've got Pummel. You've got all sorts of fun stuff that gives the Monk a very large toolbox in terms of combat capabilities. And that's just in its active skills. Then you get into things like, Counter, the ability that all those monsters have that make it so you take a lot of extra damage if you're trying to fight them in melee. Now you can just give that to your guys, and that's awesome. You also get First Strike, which if you're fighting actual human enemies with weapons, can be devastatingly powerful and potentially completely take out an enemy before they're even able to actually get the hit on you. Add in like support skill Brawler, so that any character in any job can just use fisticuffs to great success because they actually apply their attack and their brave properly to those attacks like a monk does. There's a ton of good stuff here. Hell, even Life Font, like, as a relatively minor movement ability, it's still great to just say, hey, I'm going to regenerate HP every time I move, proportional to the amount of spaces that I move. Cool. That's a great way to keep your HP up on any sort of frontline bruiser unit. Monk is great. You really can't go wrong with it, and it can fit into so many different character builds that it really does feel like it's on the same tier to me as Squire and Chemist. Feel free to disagree with me if you want, but it's really solid. Now we have Time Mage, and Time Mage is going to be a solid A tier, I think, based solely on the fact that it has haste. Time Mage is great because it enables so much. Like, just haste makes it so that you can make your entire party, no matter what job they are, no matter what build they have, no matter what ability set you have on them, more efficient at that role, and that is insanely strong. Combine that with the fact that you can then also slow enemies, stop enemies, use gravity on things, drop meteors on things. There's a lot of really good active skills here, and while Time Mage maybe isn't the best in terms of stats and gear, Time Magic itself is very, very strong. And that's before we even get into things like Swiftness and Teleport, which are some of the pound-for-pound best endgame abilities in the game. Swiftness, just making it so that all of your charge skills trigger faster, obviously really good. Speed is good. Having your skills trigger faster and actually land where you want them to trigger, way, way better than just letting them potentially fizzle on nothing. Then Teleport, being able to say, hey, I am here, and I want to be over there. And if it's not too far away, I can just do that, regardless of height or distance or whatever. Obviously, really, really good. So yeah, Time Mage is phenomenal. It brings a lot of versatility to the table, especially for mages. I like it a lot. And now continuing on with Oracle, don't worry about the fact that the lighting has changed or that my shirt has changed. I definitely am not recording the rest of this video a day later because my voice was definitely not giving out in the first half of the video. None of that is true. Don't believe anyone who tries to tell you that it is. So Oracle. Oracle or Mystic is an interesting one, and unfortunately, I think it's going to wind up being a bit lower on the list in terms of its overall ability, contribution to other classes and jobs, because a lot of what Mystic and Oracle does that is good for it comes from the fact that it has a fairly unique weapon and stat profile with good gear and then an interesting ability setup. Just its abilities on its own, not the best, so I think it's probably going to go in C tier. The thing with Oracle is it likes to have damage output from its actual physical attacks with its staves, because they do magical damage, just in melee. The actual abilities that it brings to the table, like, yeah, you've got status effects, you can blind, you can paralyze, you can disable, you can do different stuff like that, and that can be useful. But most other jobs don't really want to be doing that when they could either be having a more direct combat impact in terms of damage or like breaking enemy gear, or they're going to have a more direct support impact with healing and haste and items to res people and things like that. Oracle falls into a weird spot where in its own kit setup, it works, but without that, it becomes less viable. It's not a bad option per se on something that already does maybe want to be casting spells, or something that at least can have good mana and then also maybe doesn't have great ranged options. Like if you want to have like a knight with a robe that has decent faith and you want to give it mystic arts to cast status effects, that could be fun, but it's certainly not optimal. And it's a pretty niche use case for how often it's even going to really be usable or viable. So as far as support skills and things like that go, also not great. You've got magic defense boost, which is like fine. It's not the most useful thing, especially compared to other utility skills that you could have. There's no equipment skills that I can think of. You get things like, what, mana font or life font, something along those lines. You can have like weather, walking, ignore terrain type stuff. Kind of like weird niche tech pieces that are very useful when they're useful, but are not going to be your general gameplay motivation. So I think Oracle is going to rest very comfortably in C. It really misses out by not having the rest of its kit in this comparison. Now, Dragoon, this is going to be a very kind of interesting one, actually, because it brings some decent utility to the table. I think it's going to land squarely in B. I'm still sticking by the fact that, unfortunately, as much as I love Dragoon, and it was absolutely my favorite job when I was a kid, the jump skill set is so limited in terms of what it's doing. It's single target damage at range that is slow. Yeah, I mean, it's good for blowing up a single target if you can land it, but that's all it does. It's like Archer's Aim in that regard. Now, fortunately, it tends to be a bit better because it does a lot more damage and you can much more reliably hit from greater ranges, especially once you get the high range versions of it unlocked. And it's a generally better class across the board, even though we're not really considering that in this overall tier list. It just basically is better aim. It's better charge, really. So it kind of outclasses Archer, and it does better than Archer in that regard. It's not the best, which is why it's not going higher, but fortunately, you do have some good support options as well. You get things like Dragonheart, just giving you re-raise when you get hit. Pretty nice. Like, yeah, okay, you're planning to be killed or knocked down, but I mean, if it's going to happen, pretty nice to be able to have re-raise to get yourself back up, right? Like, there's definitely worse options out there. The ability to equip polearms, perfectly viable, very nice option if you want to have, like, again, a knight, for example. You can attack things from 2 spaces away. Nice utility piece, perfectly reasonable. I enjoy that a lot. And then Ignore Elevation is just awesome, right? Like, it's not, again, always going to be the most useful thing, but as far as movement abilities go, being able to say, no, I don't care what the height differential is between where I am and where I want to go, I'm going there, man. And if you haven't splurged for something like teleportation through Time Mage or flies, we'll get to some of the latter jobs and they can give you that. Like, it's a very, very solid choice, and I've made good use of it on some melee-oriented jobs before. So, not the most useful ability set around, but certainly not bad. I think very comfortable in B tier. Now, Geomancer. Geomancer I actually really like, probably more than a lot of people do, and in terms of what its whole skill set brings to the table, I think it's actually an A tier set of skills. Like, I know I'm going to get pushback for this, but really, like, hear me out on this. First of all, The fact that you have so much range on the Geomancy skills, it's like 8 range with no height limit in terms of where you can target, and then it's like, what, a 1 or 2 height differential in the plus shape area of the spell when you go to cast it. That's pretty versatile. And while it's not the most damage around, it is damage that can also wind up conferring pretty useful status effects just sometimes on the fly, right? Give any job a little bit of extra magic attack power. Geomancy is actually going to do a decent amount. Like, good chip damage is good chip damage, you know? Again, going back to the classic example of a knight, because it's such a good platform to put other job skills on. Having a knight that has a little bit of extra magic damage, maybe you've got a robe on it that gives magic, or hell, maybe you're in the late game and you've got a rune blade on it, so it's getting complementary magic damage that it otherwise doesn't do anything with. Tossing Geomancy on there and just being able to throw out some elemental abilities as you're running up on the enemy, not a terrible option, especially if you get a Tanglevine stop off on something, and then you're just getting free sword attacks on it once you get there. Like, it's pretty cool. Add on to that, yeah, you get all those different status effects, and you're a little limited due to what terrain you're going to be potentially standing on any given map, but grass gives you Tanglevine, and grass is on most maps in the game. So just 8 range potential stop with a little bit of damage attached to it, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. Now, combine that with the fact that you get things like, oh, I don't know, attack boost as a support skill. Any physical attacking class is happy to have that, especially things that, oh, I don't know, have built-in dual wield, like ninjas getting some extra attack power. Sounds pretty good to me. And then also you get, like, what is it? I think you get Life Font with Geomancer, and then it's Mana Font with Mystic, if I remember correctly. So, like, you can, or no, Life Font is with Monk. There's a movement ability with Geomancer that is semi-decent. I have to actually look it up really quick. One moment. Ah, yes, that's where you get Ignore Terrain. So move unimpeded through watery terrain, and then Lava Walking, walk across lava without having to stop on a surface. Like, not the most useful things, but again, situationally useful. And then, of course, you do also get Nature's Wrath, which is just use Geomancy on something that hits you as a counter, which, again, not terrible. It's an overall pretty complementary set of skills, and just Geomancy and attack boost alone give it great options for most different jobs in the game. Hell, take a Mystic and toss Geomancy on there so that they've got some magic damage at range while they run up and poke stuff with their stick or get closer for their status effects. It's great. It's awesome. I love it. Very solid choice. A tier for sure for me. Now, Mediator. Mediator is... oh, this is going to be a weird one. The issue with Mediator, and I talked about this in my actual full job tier list with it as well, is while talk skills are strong, they're not very reliable. The hit rate on most of them is not great for effects that, while useful, are not always the most immediately powerful. Mediator is more of an army support piece in a meta sense, where you get, you know, things like Convince to be able to recruit enemy units to your side. Obviously really cool, really handy in a lot of different ways, but it's not really a directly useful combat ability. Things like the ability to raise Faith and Brave, again, very useful for army building in the long run, but you're not really doing combat stuff with it. And it's not like JP Boost, where you just need it to have the game flow in a reasonable way while still having that sort of army building sort of vibe to the ability. You don't need Brave and Faith to be boosted. You can optimize your characters by doing that, but it's not needed in any capacity to make the game flow better, you know? So I can't rate it that highly. I'm not going to say that it's all the way down in like D tier, because it does have useful stuff, like you can put things to sleep. There's options, but they're not the best options at all. I think we're gonna go... I want to say C, but I'm almost now wondering if I need to bump Mystic up one. I'm not sure, because Mediator definitely feels like C. I don't think it's really a failure, especially because you then wind up getting stuff like Equipped Guns, which is actually very useful for a bunch of different jobs as one of its support abilities, so you have that going for it. So I think C is good, but I might need to bump Mystic up, actually. Which then makes me wonder if I need to bump up Dragoon. That feels better. That feels better. I'll see if I wind up changing my mind a little bit. We'll talk about it when we get to the end of the list here, but I think Mediator solidly in C tier. It doesn't have a ton of stuff going for it. I'm going to double check to make sure I'm not forgetting any other like support skills or anything along those lines. I don't think I am. The ones that stick out in my mind are definitely like Beast Talk, to be able to actually like use skills on beasts, which is niche to begin with. Then you've got the actual convince skills, and then you've got equip guns, and I think that's it. So, oh, that's right, I forgot. Its reaction ability, Earplug, avoids the effects of Speechcraft. Well, I mean, unless you're doing multiplayer in War of the Lions, you really don't have to worry about that. That you encounter so few mediators, and the likelihood of them ever actually using their speech skills on you, and then the likelihood of those speech skills even landing in the first place, that you would need a reaction ability to help you get out of it. Absolutely useless. Absolutely useless. Yeah, and then other than that, it's just Beast Tongue and Tame to be able to recruit beasts and use speech skills on beasts, which beasts are already niche. So mainly you're here for some of the Orator skills and equip guns, and it's not terrible, but it's not going to be your go-to for most jobs in terms of utility. Now, Summoner. Summoner is a fun one. I think Summoner is going to be in B tier because it, as always, does not beat Black Mage in terms of raw damage capability. You do have the advantage of having a bigger AoE on all of your summons, and you do have some more utility with things like Carbuncle and Golem, some other elements that you can't normally utilize through Black Mage, but which also really aren't, like, needed in terms of resistances or weaknesses on most monsters. Like, the raw damage output of Black Mage is typically going to be more than enough as it is. It's not a bad job by any means, and you can make summoners really, really nasty, but with how long it takes some of the best summons to cast, the sort of limiting factors in terms of like how much MP they take, the overall slightly lower damage output that they tend to have, at least at the comparable spell levels to Black Mage, there's just issues there, and it makes it hard to recommend putting it on the same level as Black Mage. Now, as far as your actual like support skills go and everything, right, you've got your MP recovery skills or your MP have skills. So it's an interesting reaction ability. Having critical recover MP, I mean, it's nice to recover all of your MP, but summoners are really squishy. And yeah, you could put recover MP on other stuff to get its MP back, but most jobs, especially if you've got good equipment on them that gives them a lot of MP, not really using that much mana that they need to get hit down to critical HP just to get their mana back, right? Like, if it's that big of a deal, you're going to have things like Mana Font. You're going to have, like, a supporting monk with Chakra or something that can throw ethers at them. Like, there's other ways to get around mana manipulation that doesn't require you to get punched in the face, but only so hard. Not too hard, just hard enough. So it's very touchy on when you're even going to be able to get at the trigger, and you really don't want to be spending your own guys' turns critically wounding your summoner just so that they can get their mana back. Like, just use that turn to give them mana via another means, right? Now, have MP. That is a much more useful one, especially if you are really trying to lean harder into like big cast summoner spells or spamming things like Holy or Flare on a white mage or a black mage or something using those job skills. That's definitely nicer, and I have absolutely used Have MP to really be able to spam out spells with a particular character, again, without needing to worry about providing mana to them. Like, even then, having Have MP kind of mitigates, that's what I was going for, mitigates the need for critical recover MP, because you're probably not going to run out of MP if you're using Have MP. You know, you see what I'm saying? But it is a good skill to have. The summon spells are solid. I think Summoner is a solid B tier job in terms of the abilities that it brings to the table. Now, Ninja. Oh, Ninja. Okay, Ninja's going to be a discussion. I'm going to pull up what Ninja has again here on my phone just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything, because there's two obvious skill sets that Ninja is known for, and it's really all you ever need it for as well, which of course is the throw skills and then dual wield. So Ninja, your primary skill is using throw. So basically taking old weapons or weapons that you stocked up on specifically for this purpose, as well as specific ninja throwing weapons like shuriken and bombs, and literally hucking them across the battlefield at whatever you want to deal damage to them. And it can be pretty nasty, especially if you start throwing big, powerful weapons at stuff. It's got very long range, combined with the fact that ninjas have good speed, or just, if you put it on anything else that has a decent amount of speed, you're going to be able to basically run around in the backfield and just huck swords and stuff at things, not even letting them get close to you. And you can make use of the elements on those weapons to hit enemies' specific weaknesses, whether that be with like the elemental bombs that have ice, lightning, and fire or whatever other weapon, like a coral sword or whatever that happens to have an element on it that you want to try and hit something with as well. It's a really nice way for a physically oriented class to have access to different elements to take advantage of those weaknesses when they are relevant. And it's a great option on anything that is a physical based class. Again, toss it on Knight, and you've got a phenomenal option to deal good ranged damage as your Knight is running up to hit stuff with its sword, just as one example. And it blows stuff like aim out of the water completely, because it's instant cast, typically does just as much, if not more damage. You don't have to worry about getting knocked out of it. You don't have to worry about the enemy moving away from it. It's just phenomenal. So if you have the cash to put into powerful weapons for throw, it can be really, really nasty. Then, of course, you do have the one and only dual wield, or two swords. I mean, what is there to say about this? This is one of the preeminent skills in Final Fantasy Tactics. You equip dual wield, two swords, whatever you want to call it, and so long as you're using one-handed weapons, you can now hold two of them and literally double your damage output. It's not like you get both weapons at 75% damage so that it's still like more damage but slightly nerfed. No, it's 100% of the damage for both weapons. It allows you to mix and match if you want different weapons of different elements, or things that apply status effects, or like a damaging sword and the blood sword, or hell, just the classic dual wield monk to double fist things all over the place and deal 999 damage twice and basically kill anything in the game with one shot. Dual wield is disgusting. Ninjas come with it built in, and you can learn the skill to give it to anything that you want. And again, so long as it's using a one-handed type of weapon, you're good to go. You're off to the races. So that alone, honestly, I think makes this A tier. Really, the only reason that it wouldn't go higher is because there's a lot of jobs that just don't really care. Like, you can't dual wield spears, right? You don't really need to dual wield rods. You can if you want to have dual wield on a black mage to get like 2 wizard's rods for the like magic damage boost. Like, that is a thing that you can do, but it's a hell of an investment to get there on a black mage. Like, it's not super needed, but it is cool. Like, you can't dual wield guns, you can't dual wield bows. It's some classes just don't care about attacking at all. So it's not for literally everything like our Squire tier classes are, which I'm realizing we lost the name of the tier. Let's fix that really quick. Whoops, don't know how that happened, but regardless, we're good. It's phenomenal, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be S tier in terms of overall versatility. And same thing for throw. Only really physically oriented jobs care about throw. Those that do love it, and that's why it's A tier, but it's not quite that overall versatility of Squire tier. Now, as far as what else Ninja brings to the table, you do have a couple of options. They're not the best. You have water walking for movement skills, to just walk across and even stop on water. Useful in some maps, typically earlier game maps than when you wind up having Ninja available to you, though. Water maps don't tend to be around all that much in the later game, to the point that you actually need something like this, so not the most useful. And then you've got Vanish, so just become invisible when you get hit. Not terrible. A little bit of a tech piece that can come up in a couple of strats, but not an all-around great piece to use. And then Reflexes doubles physical and magical evade rates. This one can actually be really fun if you're trying to make like a crazy tanky knight or something. You give him a mantle, you give him a big shield, maybe like a defender sword, parry, and reflexes. Oh, they are going to be untouchable. Give him an Aegis shield for the big magic evade boost. Woo-hoo-hoo. You want to talk about a character that's like never going to die unless they're getting targeted by like holy knights with their 100% chance to hit stuff. Love it. So that's definitely a solid one. We do like reflexes. So even though there's a couple of duds in there, like water walking, overall the ninja's got a great skill set, and there are a lot of different jobs and setups in the game that will like having those skills. Now, Samurai here. Samurai is going to be an interesting discussion, I feel like. Kind of like Geomancer. I think this is a very underrated set of job skills, and I might maybe overrate it because I love it so much. But I think Samurai does bring enough to the table to make it A tier as well. And I know we're getting a lot of good stuff here, but there's a lot of really good jobs in FFT for sure. And there's a lot on here that's not going to be making it to A that we have coming up at least. Samurai is interesting because, again, it gives you another melee range magic option that can actually deal a decent amount of damage in a pretty good AoE. Combine that with the fact that you have the ability to put just like Protect and Shell on your entire party for free, or I think Regen is another one, and it's a great support piece as well. The Samurai skills overall can be a little picky. You really want to spec into your magic damage as much as possible if you're going to try to use it for damage. But you put something like that on a Black Mage and they will shred everything around them while also being able to support the party. So there's a lot going on there for any magically oriented job that decides that they want to use it. And even your physical based jobs can make some use of it, even just for the utility or for the chip damage. So there's a lot going on there with that. Now, where things get interesting, though, is when you get into some of the counter and support skills, which I think I know all off the top of my head, but again, I want to double check here, because I didn't get a ton of sleep last night, because I was getting brutalized by the Expedition 33 Act 2 boss. Bone Crusher, now, if I remember correctly. Deal damage equal to own maximum HP when critically wounded. This one is pretty fun. It's not the most useful, again, like we talked about with Summoner, relying on something getting you hit hard enough that you go to just critical, but like not die. Hard to pull off, and it's only in melee as well. It's a ton of damage if you do actually wind up having it trigger, but it's very situational, so not really the best. I would rather just have something like Counter or First Strike, honestly. But then you have Shira Hidori or Blade Grasp. Evade non-ranged physical attacks. Now, in the original version of FFT, before it got fixed in War of the Lions, it was actually bugged. So it would work on way more attacks than it was actually supposed to. Things like, again, non-ranged physical attacks, like bullets, or arrows, or whatever, you could just catch out of the air. Which was really cool, don't get me wrong, but it made Samurai way more busted than it was supposed to be. And I think it was also able to Blade Grasp monster attacks in Melee, which, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe that got fixed as well, because none of that was supposed to be the case. It's just supposed to be melee weapons from humans in melee range. Now, that said, that is still extremely strong. You don't need to worry about being able to block, about being able to evade. You can just have Blade Grasp with high enough Brave and become essentially invulnerable to all melee attacks from weapons. That's awesome. That is so obviously stupidly strong. And pretty much every job in the game would be happy to have Blade Grasp, even if there's other counter skills that would be more optimal for them. Now, you combine that with Equip Katana and Double Hand as support abilities, and you've got some good stuff going on. Equip Katana, not the most needed, like, there's not really anything fancy about katanas, they just do good damage, which is cool, but there's other good melee weapons out there. They're not really required for anything. It's not like Equip Swords, where you have like a bunch of swords with interesting status effects and elements and stat boosts and stuff. And like Holy Knights need swords to be able to use their skills. So there's utility there. Not the case with katanas. So like, whatever. Double hand though. Two hand. You use a single-handed weapon in two hands and boost your damage. Cool. Two hand a spear, two hand a sword. Crush the enemy with a ton of damage. If you're for some reason not looking to use dual wield, or you're using a weapon type that you can't normally dual wield as it is, you can get your attack damage boost with double hand, which is awesome. It's just another good damage boost support ability. So overall, Samurai brings a lot of good versatility and utility to the table, and I think it very easily secures its spot in A tier. Now, Bard and Dancer, these are interesting ones. These are very, very interesting ones. How do I even want to go about this? The thing with Bard and Dancer is if you're using their song or dance skills, that is what you're using. It doesn't support another job's skill set. If you're using them, that is what that character is doing, because you set your song or your dance and you just let them go. All you can do is move. You can't take any other actions. If you want that song or that dance to continue, you just have to let them do their thing. So at that point, the only thing that matters is what gear they have, and then what like other support and reaction abilities they have. Their other active skill does not matter in the slightest. And because it takes so long for some of those songs and dances to trigger, you really need to just do it as soon as the battle starts and then let it go. as such, it's not the best in terms of versatility and what it brings to other jobs. But the effects that they have can also be really, really solid, especially if you want to put it on something that's really fast, like a ninja, or even a thief, really, and just let them go, and just let them sing, let them dance. All the different stat boosts and healing and everything that you can get from Bard, all the different little bits of damage and enemy debuffs and status effects you can get from Dancer are really nice if you build for them. So I think that does earn them a pretty quick spot in B tier. Now, the thing to keep in mind is you also have some weird utility abilities. So let's just pull up first example Bard here. For example, beyond all of your songs, like, Nameless Song that gives a bunch of status boosts, or like Magical Refrain that boosts all of your magic damage, you get Magic Boost, just period. Like, yes, put Magic Boost on whatever, your Black Mage, and anytime they get hit, they'll get more magic attack. Not something that you want to be happening super often, but there's worse options out there. It's not like a Black Mage wants to be countering with a bonk stick anyway, so you may as well get some extra magic damage if they do get hit, which is nice. And then, Faith Boost. Again, do you want any of your mages to get even more efficient with their spells, more accurate, deal more damage, have faster activation times on them? I think is also affected by Faith, not entirely sure. Faith Up is pretty wild, man. That is definitely a good one. So that is a nice option to have. Then, Move +3. Just increase move by 3. Also, Fly. Fly over enemies as well as any other obstacles. Yeah, the movement utility of Bard is pretty good. The one issue is that it's so expensive. And taken with the fact that your Bard songs, while useful, are not the best in terms of overall synergy, I think the job is going to sit at B tier. It takes so long to get to the job in the first place. Those abilities all take so long to learn. And then the actual job skill itself, kind of niche, makes it a little bit hard to justify putting any higher, even though it is good. Now, Dancer, we have to double check because it has a little bit of a different loadout. So we'll pull up Dancer here. Basically, as far as the dances are actually concerned, it's the opposite of all the Bard stuff. So instead of buffing you and giving you healing, it debuffs the enemy in the same way and gives them damage and status effects and everything. So just trade positive for negative and you're good to go. But the support skills, that's where things get interesting. So, Fury, reaction ability, increases physical attack power. I mean, would you like your ninja to deal more damage because she got hit? You can. Would you like your knight to deal more damage because she got hit, as knights tend to do because they're on the front line? You can. Monk, Dragoon, they would all be happy to have it. Set up a little bit of a berserker setup. Hell, even as the enemy is coming to you, just have your whole team turn to your new berserker and go, you, and then just start pummeling them or throwing stones at them to really piss them off and boost up their attack damage. Maybe while they're also focusing. Like, you can get an insane attack boost here, only on female characters because it's only dancers that get Fury, and only female characters can be dancers, but still, like, choice stuff. Very good. And then Brave boost, same thing. Instead of Faith, it's Brave, which again is awesome. If you're not someone that likes to do the grind where you use like Ramza's Steel skill, like S-T-E-E-L, not S-T-E-A-L, or like Mediator's Brave Up to get all of your characters to have max Brave anyway, this is a solid option to just get some extra Brave at the start of a fight and make certain physical attacks better, make your reaction abilities trigger faster. Like, there's good options there with that, even if it's maybe not necessarily quite as strong as using something like Fury, but still really solid. Then, this is where things get a little more sad. Instead of move +3, you get jump +3. I mean, fine, right? But you can also just get ignore elevation on Dragoon way earlier, so like... And then you also get fly. Which, call me crazy, I think flying might be better than jumping. Granted, it costs a lot more to learn than jump +3, but like... If you're in the grind for Dancer and Bard skills as it is, Fly is generally going to be better. So, with these sort of different things going on. I think Dancer still does hit B tier. I like Dancer's offensive-oriented AoE abilities more than Bard's defensive and support-oriented abilities. So while you don't have as good movement tech, you've got better reaction abilities and a better active ability. So I think it balances out, and Dancer is also going to be in B tier. Definitely a very solid class. It just takes a long time for it to get online. Now Mime. Mime is in F tier, but for a very specific reason. Mime does not care about its own skills. Like, okay, maybe I shouldn't say that. Hold on. It just copies stuff. It doesn't get, it doesn't get any other abilities, I don't think. It's literally just copies stuff. And then has innate Brawler, Beastmaster, and Concentration. All of which are nice, don't get me wrong, but Mime is more... It's like an ability in a character for your other characters in a weird way. So it's almost like in a superposition, actually, of F and S, now that I think about it. It is solely dependent on what your skill as a player is and how you have your party set up. I guess that means at maximum functionality with maximum optimization, Mime would be S tier. Because it can be whatever, which is great, but it requires you to know how to make it be whatever, which for a lot of players is not great. But if we're talking optimization, then yeah, I mean, I guess it would be Squire tier. It's just a character that's a walking set of abilities of your other characters. Mime is weird. It's a really cool job, but it's a really weird job. So I think we'll leave it in Squire tier. If y'all want to argue about it in the comments with me or with each other, fair enough. Let me know how you would define Mime in a tier list, honestly. I'd be curious to hear that from you guys. Okay, our final three here. Calculator. Calculator is an interesting one. I'm going to pull up its support skills as well because it has actually some interesting options, but obviously people typically just think of it for its math skills because, I mean, that's what it does. Calculator is kind of like Mime in that it's heavily reliant on your other job skills and abilities that you've learned. That said, once you have all of those magical skills, or spells really, learned, it can do anything. So I think that automatically puts it in Squire tier, especially when you look at just the job skill alone and not on Arithmetician. Because that's, as we've talked about in the previous class tier list video, you don't want to use a character as an Arithmetician because the stats are abysmal. They are horribly slow. The growth rates are atrocious. You want to get your whole arithmetics skill set and then put it on something else. Anything that's going to be faster, anything with better magic damage, anything. Like put it on a Black Mage and go, and you're set. You're good. And that's what we're talking about here today. So I think it would automatically be Squire tier just because of what it brings to the table. And that's before we even get into the other skills that it has. So if we look at this here, where is... Yes, okay. Move JP. I mean, great for the tail end of your grinding, but if you're already at Calculator with a character, there's probably not a whole lot else that you need to grind. Unless you grind straight to Calculator, get JP, and then use that to unlock the spells on your mages. But at that point, you're just doing everything in reverse. So, like, what are you doing? Move, get XP. Again, if you're doing a whole bunch of min-max grinding stuff, that's awesome. Not really... Again, it's metagame army building, not combat utility. So, like, whatever. Damage split, which is interesting. Character shifts damage received from him or herself to the enemy. That can definitely be fun. That is a very solid defensive option. Distribute. When the character's HP is maxed, he or she shares any excess HP with his or her allies. Also a great option, especially if you're like spamming spells that do healing or like will target your Calculator with damage, but they were set up to absorb it, and then they distribute that to your other allies who maybe aren't set up to absorb it or it didn't get targeted. Like, that's a really fun option. And then just gained XP up. Like, yeah, again, if you're just doing min-max grinding strats, like, cool, great. Metagame army building, not the most useful thing. But really just damage split and distribute alone alongside the Calculator tier, or the Calculator skills, I think definitely puts it in Squire tier. It's very, very solid, especially when it's freed from the other issues that the job has. Now, our last two here, Dark Knight and Onion Knight. Dark Knight, just for raw power and the other skills that it gives you, has to be S tier. It just feels so weird to say because it takes so long to get it that the game has already been broken. But yeah, any character that can wield a sword is happy to have the Dark Knight skill set because they will just one-shot everything. They're happy to have like any of the other support skills that Dark Knight has. I will pull them up. I know they're busted. You'll be able to get move +3 and jump +3 with Dark Knight, depending on which gender you are, because it's the opposite of like whatever you would get from Bard or from Dancer. So you can get the other version of that movement ability from the appropriate gender's Dark Knight, if you know what I'm saying. Like, so I mean, that's cool. That's great. Those are great skills to have. Yes, Vehemence. Increased attack power by 50% and decreased defensive power by 50%. So if you're just trying to completely max out your damage and hit 999 on every single attack that you do, I mean, that's just a great way to do it, especially if you're not worried about getting hit in the process. Like if you're just outspeeding the enemy and one-shotting them, awesome. HP boost just gives you more HP by 20%. Doesn't hurt. There's better options, but it doesn't hurt. Certainly not a bad one to have if you want to make an Uber tank. And again, hit 999 HP. And then, yeah, you get your jump +3 or your move +3, depending on what gender your Dark Knight is. So, like, hey, it's great stuff all around. Issues with the classes balancing aside, like, it is just great. Squire tier is where it goes. And then finally, we have Onion Knight, and Onion Knight is F. The reason that Onion Knight is F is because it doesn't have abilities, and I will prove it to you. All Onion Knight does is wait until you have everything else in the game maxed out and have good gear on it, and then just let it one-shot everything with basic attacks. It doesn't get abilities. It doesn't do anything. So yeah, it can't contribute anything to a character's build. Like, you literally have no abilities. The Onion Knight learns no abilities and is unable to equip abilities of any kind. Its special ability is being able to use any kind of equipment and is the only job class to equip the famed Onion equipment. Straight from the wiki. For this tier list, that means it is an abject failure. There are no abilities upon which to rank it. It has no abilities with which it can provide any sort of extra utility or damage or anything else to the rest of your party. It is a solid F tier job, and frankly, I hate it. And that, my friends, is an overall discussion of the utility and capability of all of the abilities of jobs in Final Fantasy Tactics, at least prior to the release of FFT, the Evilise Chronicles. Will we be releasing an updated version of this tier list once that drops? Very possibly, because we know that there's balance changes being made to a bunch of different stuff, and it could wind up tweaking the numbers enough to move some tiers here. We'll have to see. Overall, though, quickly looking back over this, I feel really solid about this tier list. It's definitely top heavy, but again, that's because there's a lot of really strong stuff in FFT, especially once you know how to use it. All the Squire tier stuff is just phenomenal. Like, it's either the most busted stuff in the game, like, you know, Calculator and Dark Knight, or it's stuff that just has so much utility and baseline overall quality of life almost to it in terms of the way your characters are going to function. It has to be in Squire tier. A tier really is phenomenal. Like, Black Mage and Time Mage are great. Geomancer brings a ton of good stuff to pretty much any different type of character build in some form or fashion. Just getting re-raise and ignore elevation and jump for damage with Dragoon is awesome. I could maybe make an argument for bumping it down to B tier, but it has enough going on that I think it is nice to have as a secondary set of skills for a lot of different characters. Ninja has dual wield, which is just stupid, and then throw is great as well. Samurai brings a bunch of utility to the table. And then everything else I think is pretty good. Like, all of our B tier stuff has use cases, but it's not going to be something you're like looking at every time on every character in every build, like our A tier stuff or our S tier stuff. C, Thief and Mediator are really just utility pieces for the metagame. They don't do a ton for you in terms of moment-to-moment gameplay. Archer just sucks. Unfortunately, aim is terrible or charge is terrible. It doesn't have great support and utility abilities. All it really has is adrenaline boost, and that is, again, situational at best. And then Onion Knight doesn't have abilities, so it's an F tier. I'm pretty okay with that. The question is, are you okay with that? And I'm sure that you all are going to let me know, whether you skipped to the end of this video and just skipped all of the context and all of the discussion just so you could see what my final tiers were and potentially yell at me about them, or if you just think I'm particularly wrong about something. I'm sure there are a lot of heated comments already. But it is always a fun discussion to see what it is that people have to say, especially when people do get into good, constructive, creative conversations, which I'm always happy to take part in as well. So let me know all of your thoughts about these rankings in the comments down below. And as you've probably been seeing on the right side of the screen, I guess now kind of over my head, which is, I really should figure out a better way to do that at some point, but we'll deal with that later. Thank you to all of my channel supporters, both my YouTube members and my patrons. You guys make it so much easier to keep doing this whole YouTube thing, help to get through the ups and downs of ad rev and sponsorships and yada, yada, yada. Knowing that I can rely on y'all is a huge pressure off my back. And with the upcoming release of Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles, y'all channel supporters are going to be the people who are first in line to get custom characters that I will have to use during our campaign of FFT. The highest tier supporters, of course, get first dibs, then everyone else, and then if we still have room, once all of the supporters have had characters submitted and are introduced into the campaign, then I'll open it up to the general public as well. But once September 30th rolls around, if you want to make a custom character that you can designate the name, the job, what abilities it'll have, what gender it is, what type of gear it's going to use, all that type of stuff, then you're going to want to look at my Patreon and my YouTube memberships to try and get that character submitted. We'll have more detailed information about that as we get closer to the release. And with all of that said, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all once again so much for watching. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, y'all, be good to each other. Bye now.